All right. Hi, everyone. All you beautiful people out there. We are back. I am back. And today I am here with Mary Deioma. Hi, Mary.
Hello, everybody.
And I'm really, really excited to
Hi,
talk to you,
Sharon.
Mary.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Of course. Thank you for being here. I feel honored. Mary has experienced a lot of transcendental experiences, and she's written a book called Loved, A Transcendent Journey. And I can't wait to dive in with her experiences. We had a little talk earlier the other day, and what she's a little bit that she shared with me is really, really fascinating. So I can't wait to talk further with her. Let me read your bio real quick, Mary, and then we'll start chatting, okay?
Okay.
All right. Okay, Mary Deioma had a transcendent and several out-of-body experiences during which she journeyed through the numerous significant levels of heaven and what is called hell. As a result, she returned with a deeper understanding of the conscious universe and went on to write a critically acclaimed memoir about her experience titled Loved, A Transcendent Journey. She is also an inspirational speaker with a personal mission to share the love and to get the word out that we are divinely loved. Mary is a member of and contributor to the International Association for Near-Death Studies, IANS.org, and makes frequent appearances at her local IANS in Orange County and Los Angeles, San Bernardino, San Diego, Tucson, and Mesa, Arizona, as well as at the Life After Life group in Laguna Woods, California. Also a Reiki master and reader of playing cards. Oh, cartomancy? Oh, okay. I'd never heard that. Mary is a former volunteer on the board of directors for the Learning Light Foundation and Metaphysical Center in Anaheim, California. She is also the founder of the popular Facebook page Sun Whisperers, which chronicles space weather and solar activity. The fifth of 8 children, Mary was born and raised in the small town of Alliance, Ohio, and after 30 years in Orange County, California, now resides in Louisville, Ohio, or is it Louisville?
It's Louisville here.
It's Louisville, okay.
It's Louisville in Kentucky.
Right.
It's Louisville in Ohio.
It's so funny. I used to live in Louisiana, and I lived in Lafayette, Louisiana. Now it's Lafayette, Louisiana, but Lafayette in Indiana, I guess it is. Lafayette, Indiana? Yeah. Depends on where you live, right? Okay, this sounds really, really amazing. So your experience is not what we would call a near-death experience then, correct?
Yeah, I don't know what to call it. I call it
Okay.
an enlightenment experience. I have only heard of a few other people who had a similar experience as mine where they were awake
Okay.
and not near death when their experience happened. So it doesn't fit the category of out of body experiences because I was fully operational of my body. Like most out of body experiences happen when you're asleep.
Mhm.
I mean, in the near death experience, part of the out of body experience, a part of near death experience, some of those people are awake or conscious, sort of. I don't know, but they're close to death. So it
Yeah.
has a, anyway. I did actually have a near death experience when I was 5, and I forgot about it
Hmm.
completely until after I had written my book and after I had made all my websites and everything. But and I remembered it, so
Oh,
it
that's
counts.
interesting. Yeah, that's interesting because I didn't recall my near-death experience when I was 9 until after I had my near-death experience or my death experience. I call it. I feel like, there's no proof that I did, but I feel I did. Um, when in 2001, and that's when I recalled the NDE and when I was 9.
You had your experience in 2001 also?
Yeah, yeah, yours was in 2001. Yes, yes, I did.
Yeah, mine was in
Interesting.
March, March 29th, 2001.
Oh, wow. Okay. Mine was June 11th.
How about that?
I know, right? That's so funny because in the group I was in last night, and the course I'm teaching on out-of-body experiences, by the way, we talked about how a lot of us, well, usually, I guess around this age, have had types of quickenings or enlightening experiences around that time, the early 2000s.
I think it was related to the solar activity. That's just my theory.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. So please share, if you would, with you what happened, or some of it.
Well, let me tell you where I was at in my life at the time. I was a spiritual seeker, and I had had some difficulty in my childhood, and I really was resisting the idea that there is a higher power altogether. And basically I was an atheist. I said, to myself, that if there was a God, he said, not that pleasant of a being. Yeah. But I had a very logical mind, or I thought I did. I don't know. I wanted to approach it logically, and I created an experiment for myself to pursue. And I actually read a whole bunch of near-death experiences around that time, and I got the idea to use the template of the near-death experience to conduct an experiment. And that was to write out my life review. So I started journaling, and I just started at the beginning of my life, and I journaled, and I would give myself what do I remember from 1? What do I remember from 2? And I just started that process. Because not everybody, many of the near-death experiences talk about a life review, and how much that transforms them of their experience when they have that. That's the wake-up call that they get, or that's the most transformative piece. Not most, but anyway, it seemed like something that I could actually do without going supernatural. Mm-hmm. Because I was very not supernatural at that point, or at least I was in denial of all my supernatural stuff at that point. And anyway, so it took me about 4 months to journal it all. And I didn't realize how much supernatural stuff was going on already, or had been going on my whole life, until I started journaling. And as I started to remember, I'm like, oh wow, when I was 10 years old, I had a dream that I was another person in a different life. And when I had a different dream, I don't know, probably around 10, where I was flying through the house and flying around the neighborhood. So I didn't know that might have been an out-of-body experience. Mm-hmm. But as I was journaling, all this stuff started to come back, and I'm like, oh, well, I actually have had all these experiences already, even though I didn't think of them as spiritual experiences that I had. And slowly I realized that I was having a conversation with God in my mind, and that some of the answers I felt separate from me. So anyway, so
Sure.
That's got clearer and clearer as I continued. I also at the same time decided to read 20 minutes a day, something spiritual, every day. And we were talking about being a reader. Yeah, I started reading romance novels when I was 16 or whatever, but this was like choosing to read something very spiritual. So I read whatever I could find. I read the Bible. I read um, this one book, which I found it was a supernatural experience happened. Like I was in the bookstore looking for something spiritual, nothing caught my attention. And I'm like, okay, I'm leaving the bookstore now. I'm ready to leave. I stood up to leave and started striding quickly towards the door. And this book flew off the shelf right into my hands.
I knew you were going to say that.
And I went
That's
around the
funny.
books, see if anyone was there. Nobody was there. It was
Wow.
like huge.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm like,
It's
that
amazing.
just happened. It was
That's
pretty cool.
amazing. What book was it? Do you mind telling
That
me?
book, and yeah, I never would have picked it up on my own if it didn't fly off the shelf into my hand. It was called the Nag Hammadi Library.
Mm.
And I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
I would have run a million miles from that book. I mean, I don't understand those words other than library. I'm like, what is this? So I'm like, but it landed in my hands. I'm getting it.
So you read it.
So yeah. Do you know what the Nag Hammadi Library is?
I've heard of the Nagamati, but I've never heard of that book. And
The
I'm
Nag
not aware
Hammadi
of.
Library is the book where the Gospel of Thomas comes from.
Oh, oh, okay.
A lot of people are more familiar with the Gospel of Thomas, but it also has the Gospel of Philip, which mentions Jesus having a really close relationship with Mary Magdalene, and it talks about Peter being jealous of Mary Magdalene, and
Yes.
this is the one that the Da Vinci Code is pointing to when they come up with the theory that Jesus actually married Mary Magdalene.
Mhm.
But in addition to that, it also has first century people's accounts of their direct experience of the divine. And they call them Gnostics
Mhm.
because they know, because beyond any doubt, reasonable or unreasonable doubt, because there are unreasonable doubts, they know personally the divine because they experienced it. And it gave me some hope that I could possibly have my own experience. But what I didn't realize all of this preparation was doing was raising my vibration. It was working on me in the background, and I had no idea. It was the wax on and wax off of preparing for spiritual experiences. But the whole time I'm in doubt. And I was actually reading the Bible one time. I'm in my living room reading the Bible. My roommate is on the balcony smoking a cigarette. And in my mind, I'm like, prove it, prove it, prove it. And all of a sudden, not the radio or the tape recorder turned on. It wasn't close to either one of us. It was in the across the room from me, and he was outside. And all of a sudden the radio turned on, and I'm like, oh, something happened.
Oh,
I'm like,
wow.
and he looked at me and I looked at him, and I'm like, uh something happened.
Was there a message on the radio? Because
uh
usually when something, for me anyway, and what I've heard is there's a certain message that comes through when electronics come on.
uh Not this particular time. If there
Okay.
was, I didn't record it in my
Yeah,
mind.
sure.
I just was in shock that I got proof. I asked for proof and I got it.
Right.
I was shocked. And he just stood up and turned it off. He's like, whatever. But so I started to have some experiences like that. And but like one time I was a different time, a different place, a different roommate. uh so years had passed, and I was in my bed reading and thinking, prove it, prove it, prove it. And all of a sudden I at the foot, because I was actually on my stomach reading, And behind me at the foot of the bed, I felt the presence. And in the apartment, my roommate's cat went running down the hall and stopped right at my doorway and looked at the foot of my bed and then ran away.
Wow.
And I had another cat was right next to me, was just looking at the foot of the bed. And so I heard the cat run down, and then my cat was looking at the back behind me, and I slowly turned my head to look.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw a shadow. It was there. It was definitely there. And I'm like freaking out. And I'm like, no way, I'm not ready. So then I said, I'm not ready. And then it go away, and it went away. But I was continuing this practice of reading and writing and attuning myself until eventually I was ready. And I eventually I started to hear or know the word prepare, like the conversation, and I kept getting this prepare. And I realized that I was preparing for something, but I didn't know exactly what I was preparing for.
Right.
And then what happened that was the catalyst for me, which as I have now come to learn, there are many different kinds of catalysts for people. So this just happens to be mine. And I would validate somebody's catalyst if their catalyst was close to death, or maybe they had partaken in some chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
That's a valid catalyst, that it simulates close to death in the body. But my catalyst was an emotional catalyst, and it's the kind of emotional confrontation that really brings to your challenges your sense of who you are to the core. So I had, at that time in my life, I was engaged to be married to a man from Bangladesh, and he had just traveled back to Bangladesh because his mom was in the hospital, and I had a feeling like, don't go. But anyway, he had uh, he had gone back a different time and everything was fine. But anyway, this time I felt like, don't go. So he called me and he said, okay, we're going to get married in 3 days. When I get back, I'm coming back, and we're going to get married as soon as we get back. And I was really happy that we're like, okay, we're going to get married. Yeah. So then the next morning I was very happy, and I was singing, I got the joy, joy, joy down in my heart.
Nice.
So as I was driving to work, where I was a accounting clerk, and
We talked about that yesterday, that we were both in accounting before our awakenings. Well, still after a while, but that was our career.
yeah,
Not funny.
very grounding.
It is. I think it helps keeps us balanced. It helped keep me balanced, especially after my quickening. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so that day was when I look back on it and analyze from the after perspective, I realized I was active. All of my chakras got activated, and I didn't even know one thing about chakras back then. I didn't ever meditate this entire time. I didn't meditate. I was only reading and journaling and having that conversation in my mind. So anyway, so when I was singing that song, the next verse is, if the devil doesn't like you, you can sit on attack. And anyway, when I sang that part of the song, I felt activation, attack, like I felt like it sat on attack.
Mm. Which chakras?
I don't know the numbers. The first chakra,
The first,
I
the
guess,
root,
root
the root
chakra.
chakra.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
root chakra.
Yeah.
Then when I got to work, I had PMS cramps. And so that's the second chakra.
Mhm.
And then out of the blue, I felt like I had been kicked in the stomach. So that's the third chakra. So that moment where felt like I got kicked in the stomach, I had a knowing in my, like, to my core, to my gut,
Mhm.
that he had gotten married to someone else. That's when I had that. I felt like I had been told
Mm.
that, like, with absolute clarity, and I knew it beyond any doubt. And I didn't realize, I mean, I knew it so totally that he just married someone else. And it's hard to, like, it doesn't make any logical sense that I knew it that much, that I didn't have any question about it.
Mhm.
Like, I didn't doubt it, that I knew that that was a fact.
Yeah.
So I was at work and I was very upset about that. And I tried to, like, I didn't want to lose it and cry in front of everybody at work. So I tried to shut down my emotions, like shut them down.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe I was like closing all my chakras, but uh I managed to make it through most of the day, and then I, like, was leaving about an hour early. I was like, okay, I can't take it. I got to get out of here. So when I went to drive home, about a 20-minute drive, uh I had just recently read or seen Gary Zukov and read his book. He was on Oprah, and he says to feel your feelings when you have them. And so I, for the drive, I decided to let myself feel the pain, and it was excruciating. And I went like immediately past that moment where you would cry to a, like, you can't even cry anymore. It's so
Mhm.
heartbreaking. And so as I was driving home, I was like, I can't tolerate this pain. Is so intense. How can I deal with it? What should I do about it? And then I thought, well, what would Mother Teresa do? And I thought, well, Mother Teresa would love it anyway. So then I asked myself, can I love anyway? And the answer was right there. I did have it within me and within my heart to love anyway. So then I asked, what would Jesus do? Jesus would forgive. And so I asked myself, can I forgive? And I found it there. I was like, oh, okay, I can forgive. I can understand what I didn't understand before.
Yeah.
I was like waking up to this new perspective of understanding where he was coming from, where that culture is coming from. And it started to, I started to grasp the difference and the valid different points of view, that it just because they have a different point of view doesn't mean it's wrong, you know.
Right. So you were able to see the situation from a much wider and higher perspective rather than the hurt person, the hurt Mary here, which is where we get stuck. And yeah, and that resonates so much with me because of, and I've shared it here before with my remembering my childhood abuse, and and Jesus helped me, Yeshua helped me get through that. And as I remembered it, I had to figure out how to forgive that experience, even though I didn't remember it till, in my 40s, but he had to help me process it and heal it, whatever that took. And so I was able to come to that space in night after night of meditation with him, and being in that space where I realized there really isn't anything to forgive. I understood it from that higher point of view, that we chose this experience for our soul growth. I just wasn't able to get over it in many, many, many lifetimes, to process it and heal it. So he agreed to do this again with me. So there wasn't anything to forgive. And when you have that higher perspective, I mean, it's so transformational.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From in that moment, I could understand from like the human perspective, like he was raised in that culture and was programmed from birth to think a certain way and prioritize his life a certain way, and that he almost didn't have a choice in what he was doing, because they're programmed to put their family above themselves much more than we are in America. We have somehow have a value of independence. They didn't have that. Anyway, there was it's very complicated social dynamics that I woke up to. But then he had taught me a lot about Muhammad, and I thought, what would Muhammad do? And Muhammad's base message was to submit. I used to think that meant like to humiliate yourself, but in that moment, I understood it to mean to turn it over to God.
Mm-hmm.
So as I'm driving my car, I had this imagination of my heart going out to God, and I opened up my heart, and now I'm activating my heart chakra.
Nice.
And I imagined my heart, and as I did that, a huge beam of white, like in the physical, opened up in the sky and came down through the windshield of my car and touched me physically on my shoulder. And it was love. Precious, you are a precious child, and I love you, and you're my baby. And I felt that divine love, that like, but like a parent loves their infant precious child. And as the beam came down, I had this remembrance feeling like, oh yeah, I remember who I am. I am you. And it was so much love just flowing into me.
Wow.
Every cell in my body became conscious, like the consciousness in my head. Like I could feel the light coming out of every cell in my body. And I actually had my hands on the steering wheel, and I looked down at my hands, and my hands were glowing a bluish white light, like of the color of your background right there. And like alien, like literally bioluminescent glowing. And I was like, but I could feel the love in every single cell in the consciousness. And it was just so intense and beautiful and full. And
Wow.
I saw that scene unfold from multiple perspectives. Like I split into various physical locations. Part of me was seeing the scene unfold from the passenger seat, like right next to me. So I could see it, the light go to this way because it was hitting my shoulder here and I was over there. And I could see it from like the back seat. And
Well, excuse me, while you're driving.
while I'm driving, okay, yeah. So I'll tell you right now that the whole thing that's coming has all unfolded within a second and a half.
Mhm.
And I know that because I travel that same pathway every day from work. And I was able to like, okay, it started right here and it ended right here. And it was it was quick. But
Wow.
in experiential time, it
Sure,
was eternal.
sure. Yeah.
And anyway, I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit. My perspective also went into the beam of light, and I went up the beam of light, but part of me is still driving the car. The part of me that it feels the same as I am in this moment, like conscious, fully in control of the car, not half gone and not, spacey. I was awake, and it was like I got to be like every cell in my body was awake too. So that was many of me, but each one had the same cognition. And I split into different perspectives. I maintained my own cognition in each perspective. I didn't lose any. It was like when you light a candle, you don't lose any of the fire from
Right.
the candle that starts. And I multiplied. So anyway, part of my consciousness went into the beam and I went up the beam. And as I went up, my perspective of watching the scene went, like I saw the earth go down, and now I'm above the earth looking down, and I can see the thin blue line of the atmosphere. And I I feel the love that I am embrace the entire earth.
Mm.
And I become one with like this field of like a hug that is around the earth and then through. And then my focus shifted, and I was now in a tree, in all the trees on the planet. Like I was wrapped around in all the trees. And my focus went from all the trees to being simultaneously focused on a singular tree, in seeing myself in the branches of the tree. And I'm feeling this oneness with everything, feeling, but like the trees, the personality of the trees, and the uh the richness of being the trees. And then my focus shifted and I was all the grass on the planet, and all the different kinds of grass and all the different places, and then down to a specific blade of grass. And the energy of the love shifted to a delightful, joyful, gleeful, playful love. Amazing, like the zingy kind of flavor of love. And then my focus shifted again, and I was a rock. And the energy of that was like um grounding, but it was it was uh, like different time, like the flow of time was different and more gravitas. I just more serious and strong and powerful. And then my focus shifted and I became the entire universe.
Wow. Wow.
the whole entire universe. And I was the planets and down to the particles of dust in the stars and the suns and the planets and the dust and the stars was alive as all the cells had been, and conscious as all the cells had been when I experienced all my cells. So I knew myself as the universe. And then my focus shifted again, and I was the tiniest subset, sub particle of the physical universe, the like what isn't ever visible. It was a field of, it was like the graphic behind you, that the circle parts. Yeah, all the circles, and they were in a matrix. And each particle had rays of light coming off of it. And in those rays of light would meet up with the next particle's rays of light. And there was all of the knowledge of the universe. I called it ether when I first experienced it, and when I talk about it in my first video. But I have studied some physics since then, and I think it might have been the Higgs field, but it also could be the same thing people talk about when they talk about the Akashic records.
Mm.
It might not be, I don't know. Honestly, I only can describe what it was. Each particle was love. It was a physical form of love, and the rays of light were love, and the information and consciousness was there, and that was all love too. And then it had, like, somehow in this matrix has all the knowledge of everything. And then my focus shifted again, and I went to what is called the void, but I like to call it the vast, because it isn't void of anything. It's everything.
I like that.
And it is so much greater in love and consciousness than the entire universe. The entire universe would compare to a grain of sand in the universe, as the universe would be within the vast. And it had all this energy of potential, and all the information of everything and beyond that. And in the vast, there was a beyond the vast hint of there's something even more than this that I just got a hint of.
Wow. Wow.
And then suddenly I'm fully integrated all my parts back into my physical body, and I'm still driving the car.
Oh my gosh. How do you- I can't even form a question right now.
That's okay.
No,
I'll
or
just keep
stay with
going because
just keep going. Yeah.
it's not over yet.
Oh, okay. Good.
So while that all was happening in that second and a half, I was driving right past the Barnes and Noble, and the Barnes and Noble sign illuminated with a golden light. It wasn't the light turned on it, but it was it it was a golden light surrounding it that basically was saying, "Go here, go to the Barnes and Noble." Another hint for reading. And I had like a second to decide, because it was like an exit within the exit. And I'm like, okay, turn. And I went to the Barnes and Noble. But by that time, I had returned to a normal state of consciousness of just being one person in here in this body. It felt like myself. Also, I was like, I had so many things going through my head as that wrapped up. And I was like, first of all, that just happened.
Wow.
Check myself.
Yeah, check myself. Yeah. What do you? Wow.
Yeah, and then I was like, with this, it felt so easy and natural, and I'm like, what a rip that nobody gets to feel that.
I know. I know. I think that about all my experiences too. Yeah.
Yeah. So
That
then
people
I was like,
aren't. That's yeah. People aren't. Yeah. Totally. Keep going. I can't form a sentence. Go ahead.
that's okay. So then I was like, okay, I go to the bookstore and I'm looking around the bookstore and I'm like, now what do I do? Okay, I guess I'm supposed to pick a book. I thought, oh, I should get this book that says it's the knowledge of everything. And I looked at it, I'm like, maybe that's the book. But there was another book that I saw that kind of caught my eye, but I didn't get it because when I looked at the cover, it said it was about math. And I'm like, math,
MATH math. Oh,
math, mathematics. And I'm like, I don't know.
you're a
Can't
bookkeeper.
even.
Why would you want to read about math again? Okay.
Well, in spite of being a bookkeeper, I still can't add the tip on the restaurant bill in my head.
That's
So
so funny. I'm the same way. Yeah. I guess we get used to using calculators or, using a tool.
yes, I'm used to delegating that task to the machines.
Right.
So anyway, I didn't get the book on math, but I went home and I tried to read the book that I did get, but it wasn't the right book. The cover of the book, it just kept flashing in my head. It was, very persistent. Wasn't gonna let up. Yeah. And it was a Thursday when it happened. So I was like, you know, actually the pain from my fiance was completely gone, but I was like, I'm gonna justify taking a day off because that just happened.
Yeah. Your
So I took
focus was definitely shifted.
so I took the next day off and I went back to the bookstore and I got the book about math. And lo and behold, I understood it.
Wow.
Yeah. So briefly, and not to bore anybody, it was a mathematical there's the biography of the guy who came up with set theory, which is um a mathematical way to describe the experience that I just had.
And what is the theory again?
That if you
Well,
take
I
an
mean,
infinite,
you called it Seth or set. What kind of theory did you call it?
like a set of numbers,
Oh, I'm sorry, a set theory. Okay.
set theory.
Okay.
If you take a set of numbers, an infinite set of numbers like the number line, and then you can take a subset of that is also an infinite set, like all the odd numbers or all the even numbers or the Fibonacci sequence. Each one is a subset of the whole, but because they're infinite, they're equal to each other.
Okay.
So it's like you hear all the book about the holographic universe. Well, the hologram is a similar type of thing. It's all of the information, but it's a when you tear that film in two, you get a hole here and a hole here instead of two halves.
Right.
So it's that you can divide it if you make the division contain the infinite set, it's still equal to the whole. And it seems like a paradox because it should be less than,
because
but
it's
it's
divided.
not.
Yeah.
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 So that's how at each level that I had experienced, I was all the love. But it was more and more and more love, but it was still all the love from the beginning.
So from here on up, we are whole.
We are love.
We are love. Yes.
Yeah. And we are consciousness. And so is everything.
Whew. Yeah. I want to cry right now.
You're allowed.
I know, right?
It's
Wow.
okay. Yeah. So
All right, Mary. We
all
had to
right.
take a little break there. That was intense. Please continue.
Well, if you want to express how you're feeling, I'm totally open to that.
Oh, I just, it's hard to express. I don't see how you can um, find the words for your experience for sure. So you've done a really, really amazing job, but I feel so much of love. That's the only way I could express it. And I just want to break down and cry, which I'm fighting back a little bit because, we're doing this just from the intense love that I feel. I mean, it's just on the surface.
I hope that translates to everybody watching too, that you can feel the love, because that's another vision that I had that I forget to talk about. But when I tell my story, I feel like my heart became like a lighthouse
Nice.
of, and the love came into me, but now I can shine that love out to everyone else,
Yeah.
like a lighthouse, and just be the light. And that's my job. And I get distracted with that. My job is to sell a book, but my job is not to sell a book. My job is just to be the lighthouse of love and just open my heart and let it shine and let it do its own work,
Mm-hmm.
and it will be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also feel that you're reminding us that that's all our jobs too. Yeah.
And that's why that picture behind you is perfect. I love it.
Oh,
It's beautiful. Yeah.
isn't it?
It is the light shining. Yeah, being the light and shining it with that geometric
Mm-hmm.
um patterns that just resonate, with your higher self.
Yeah. I know I was drawn to it. I got that on Elena Danon's website and I'm like, oh, that is so gorgeous. It really sang to me.
Yeah. Beautiful.
So I would imagine that after, and I'm sure you've had many since then, that this basically, this experience, I don't, changed your life, turned it upside down
Well,
maybe?
well, you have to realize that I had been going from this position of doubt, like prove it, prove it, prove it. And now it's proved.
It's yeah.
So that was huge. Like that cannot be minimized. To just like, because there's still so many people that are in that I need proof place. And I would say that you have to go on a journey to prove it to yourself. You
Mhm.
have to open up to your own direct experiences of the divine, however even subtle they are. Because, like, if you feel love, that is divinity.
Yes.
And when you even sit in the garden and feel the joy of the plants, you're connecting to the love that they have, and they're there to share with you. That is a spiritual experience. So every so we have to remember, start to be, just go on this your own journey of allowing your experiences to be as divine as they are, instead of saying it's only this, it's just a dream, it's just a passing thought. It's not just, it is, it's real.
I love that. I there's an echo here.
Okay, try that.
All right. So, okay, I don't hear it anymore. I just wanted to share that we are love. The experience I had with that, with Yeshua, when I need to talk a little bit to ground, if that's okay with you.
Yes, please.
Okay.
We're here together, experiencing together.
Yes, thank you. So after my near-death experience, and after my mother brought him back to me to work with me after she passed, and I was talking to her on an angel board, spirit board, she brought him back to me and said, I have him here, he's a guide for you and all this. And it took me a little while, and I've shared this before here too. It took me a little while to allow him to step in and work with me. I didn't know who he was. She didn't tell me who he was. I just felt this immense love from him when I finally sit, and I would ask her questions about him. Is he an ascended master? Is he this? Do I know him? Have I met him before? It's yes. And she called him top shelf, which is really funny. And so finally, when I said, okay, I'll meet him or I'll talk to him, I felt her step out and his energy step in. And I wept for two weeks from the immense love that I felt from him. And I still didn't feel worthy of the fact that knowing who he was, I didn't believe him. So, and he didn't really tell me who he was. I had visions. Okay. But my point was with God, source, creator, whatever you want to call the immenseness of who we are. He asked me what my what I thought God was, or my idea of God. And I wasn't spiritual, I wasn't religious or anything. I didn't study or anything like that. I was just living my life, doing whatever I was doing at that time. And and I'd have these answers like, well, God is I was raised Catholic, so that's kind of what I had to go on. I was starting to wake up a little bit. Is in everything. God is in everything. And he'd say, okay, what else? What else? And what was so cool, and I'd come up with all these answers, and he'd say, okay, what else? When it was time to end a conversation, or when I had to go in and eat dinner or whatever, we'd come straight back, and I sit in my backyard, this is in Texas, every day, and talk to him on the board. And we'd go right back to the same conversation, like there was no time in between. We were right in that space right there. And finally, I got it. He sent me this intuition, or I finally got the intuition. I guess we had to go through those layers. God is love. End of story kind of thing. And I got it. And I'm like, oh, why did it take me this long to get that? Yeah, but I got it.
So when we're feeling love in whatever form, even if it's a
Right.
little bit, if it's
Yes.
admiration, or it's a breath of peace for a moment, or whatever level of love if it's fascination of something, if it's interest, those are like very light little touches of love to the full on obsession, passion, and intensity. That all of that is God.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, and and when we wake up to this, it makes so much sense when we wake up to who and what we really are, and
And we
how much
yeah.
it's there, how much we are loved.
And noticing it, starting to notice it. And
Yes,
the more you notice it, the more it's there. And that's
good
why
point.
to notice the small things that because sometimes there are times that people feel like they don't feel any love at all, and they're in that dark place. They feel so alone. They don't feel connected to anyone. But maybe from that dark place they love cars, and it seems so impersonal, right? It's not a personality. Well, every particle of that car is love too.
Right? Yeah.
So if that is a spark that is in that person, they can validate that that's not nothing. That's
Mhm,
real.
mhm.
And that's what you can build from. Wherever you are in your growth or journey or whatever experience of the physical, uh, continue to validate that you feel something
Right.
and that isn't, that's not nothing.
It's definitely not nothing. And I also have grown to, or remembered, I guess, in my own personal experience and working with people, and I'm sure you've seen this too, Mary, is that it starts with loving ourselves. And we've been, that has kind of been programmed out of us.
Well, loving ourselves is definitely something to reach for, because that is kind of hard. even even for me, where I have this experience that I was shown that I'm precious and I am loved, I still don't embrace my self-love all the time as much as I could. And when I when I'm able to raise my vibration to that high soul level and I can look back at myself, then I feel it. I feel that self-love. But like I definitely have a challenge with that in every day. And we are up against our people trying to remind you that you need some hubris. You need to scale it back a little. You're shining too bright like the sun. I gotta put some sunglasses on.
No, yeah, no such thing as shining too bright, I think. But yeah, you're right. That's how society has um, programmed us.
Well, there's this constant balancing out of energies, so that if you're very at a very high vibration, that makes somebody else uncomfortable, and that discomfort makes them want to balance you out, balance out the dynamic. And once you realize that's what's unfolding, you can detach from that drama a little bit.
Mhm.
But sometimes you forget and you're
Yeah,
in it. You're like so in that drama.
that makes
And that's
sense.
okay. That's okay. But we have our whole all of the emotions available to us, and just because I had a spiritual experience doesn't mean I don't get really mad.
Yeah, we're here to experience the whole gamut, right?
Yeah.
And what I understand is, but get through the lower vibrational emotions as quickly as possible so that we can embody who and what we really are, which is love.
Yeah, I have in the process of doing my life review, I came up a really useful techniques to process. That was another part of the whole life review thing. And then um, to process the memories that I had, so that they weren't just stuck memories that were just there. Each one of them I went through and I looked at it and I healed it, so that that also released all of that negative energy from each one of those things through this process that was just asking questions and answering them and looking at from different perspectives. And anyway, so that I could get healing on all of that stuff. And like you were saying, you had some childhood trauma. I had some childhood trauma that even after my experience was still stuck there. And I was like, okay, I will deal with that next lifetime. Because if it didn't go away after that, then it's really intense.
Wow.
So I gave myself permission to let it go and not work on it. And although I knew I wanted to work on it, so I, in the background, it was working on itself while I got on with life. And then I actually had my Reiki attunement, and my was telling you before that the word attunement is actually such a beautiful word, because it is like changing your resonance, changing your vibration. And when I got my second Reiki attunement, I had a dream that was a dream. It wasn't a lucid dream or out of body dream. It was a regular dream. But in that dream, I was able to get healing on some of that childhood trauma, so that I was able to not hold it every day as a aching lump that I just carried around with me. And I was able to let it go finally and get
Nice.
healing on it.
Nice. Yeah. That's awesome. So that's congratulations. That's huge. Yeah.
Huge.
So you have out of body experiences?
Yes. So, of course, I was instantly addicted to the divine energy.
I can understand that.
And so I went on a journey to figure out, how can I do this again? And that's when I went to the Learning Light Foundation, where I met Dr. Al Taylor, and he wrote a book, Soul Traveler.
Oh, Albert Taylor.
Yes.
Yes, I loved that little book. Yeah.
Yeah, he was on Coast to Coast a lot. But anyway, he's a nice guy.
Yeah.
He had a ghost hunting group, and I joined the group, and we went to properties and tried to evacuate the ghosts. I don't know, but it was a nice little adventure. But in the meantime, I read his book, and I took some of his classes, and I learned the sleep interruption technique to have an out of body experience. And so I tried it, and it was easy for me, so that I didn't learn anything else in the out of body techniques, because I could just do it. And when I got a review from somebody who is an out of body expert, and he was like, there was no struggle. I'm like, well, there wasn't any struggle for me to get out of my body, because I was ready. I had already done the preparation work in journaling and healing and all of that stuff. So when I was like, okay, I want to get out of my body, I just got out of my body. Sorry, it wasn't hard.
It was natural.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so my first out of body was just to stand in my room and look back on my body. And it was, weird and cool and different. And the way things look is all different. And anyway, I had a very fun one where I got out of my body. I'm standing next to my body in my room, and I say, take me to, and I said my mom's name, but I'm like, take me to my mom. And suddenly I am traveling across the United States from California to Ohio. And I look down and I see the farmlands all patchwork flying by. And but unfortunately, I was being pulled by my torso, and my arms and legs were like, anyway, it was this way. So my arms and legs were flailing. It was awkward. It was like the worst,
Was,
not the best flying experience.
was that what we call
Wasn't Superman.
It's hard to get the right form when you're flying, isn't it? I know. You do the Superwoman
Yeah,
stance, or you
I
clap your
did eventually.
arms.
Yep, I did swim like this one.
Swim, yeah.
Anyway, but this one was very uncanny. And so I was like flipping around. So
That's so funny.
I go, okay, I don't want to be traveling. I just want to be there. And then I was there. And I ended up in her closet. And I was like,
Of all places. Right.
what am I doing here? And I had I looked around the closet and I noticed that she put some sweaters on the hangers in her closet, and she's the one who taught me, don't do that, because then you get this little things on your shirt. You're walking around with these little points because
My
you have
mom
your
told me the
sweaters on.
same thing.
But I was like, what am I doing in the closet? Anyway, then I was suddenly back in my body, and I woke up. I picked up the telephone and I called my mom, and I'm like, wow, you won't believe it. I was just in your closet. Why do you have do you have sweaters on hangers? And the funny thing is, she didn't even doubt that I was just in her closet. She goes, I didn't have room in the drawers.
She was so embarrassed about having sweaters on wire hangers. Okay. She didn't even think about you traveling out of your body. Oh, that's so funny. That sounds like my mom. Gosh,
Ending her position.
they would have been good friends. Okay.
So then she told me that my younger sister had just been over there organizing her closets and making them all nice, and she wanted to show me. And then I'm like, oh,
That's
that's
why.
why it was in her closet.
Oh, that is so amazing.
Her will combined with my will and put me there so I could experience how nice and neat her closet was.
And then she has sweaters on wire hangers.
So she knows I was really there checking it out,
Yeah,
inspecting.
that is so funny. I love how our higher self works.
But that actually is like, it's veridical. That's like verifiable information.
Totally.
And so, I mean, how rare is that to be able to say, I was literally across the country bilocating. I was literally there to see and record data that was then verified. That's nothing.
Is that, would you really call that a bilocation, or that's, or a classic out of body experience, or out of body experience? I guess there's, I mean, it's a fine line, but
Yeah. I would say it would be more out of body than
yeah.
bilocation. And I was like,
No,
throwing
no, I
fancy
get
word.
it. Yeah. Yeah, to me, bilocation is where you have awareness in both places. Even though we know, you know, that it's the classic out of body where you know that you're home in bed, that your body is home in bed, but your
Consciousness.
yes, your consciousness, your second body, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, your frequency is in that form in another locale. You know, you mentioned turning around, looking at your body in the bed, and it didn't really, you said it was interesting or something like that, right? Okay. Well, for me, it was transformational. It was an epiphany for me the first time that I did that. And it was early on in my exploration, and something told me to turn around, because I always run as fast as I can away from my body, because you know how it can pull you in if you don't sometimes. And something told me to turn around, look, and I looked and I saw my body there. Sometimes I turn around and there's I don't see a body there. But this time I did see, and I was sleeping by myself at the time, so I did see my blonde hair and the blankets up to here, all tucked in, and I'm thinking, I didn't recognize that body. I didn't recognize who it was. And I think to myself right away, who is that in my bed? That's my first thought. And then it hit me, oh my gosh, that's my body. And I had absolutely no attachment to it, no attraction to it, to be honest with you. Like that it was, something that was part of me, kind of thing. I actually looked at it like what came to mind was it's just a bag of bones. It's just a car, that kind of thing. And I realized at that time that this consciousness, this light being who's standing here viewing my body, was who I'm getting goosebumps talking about, who I really am. That body is just a vehicle. And that was huge for me at the time, because we are so used to, in this realm, so used to defining ourselves by our physical body, according to our physical body. That was really big for me.
That is, yeah, but that realization that you are not your body. But
Yes.
I as you were talking about like how you felt about the body, I never asked myself how I felt about the body until just now. And I realized I did have an affection towards the body as that's my friend.
Okay. Nice. Nice.
Even though it's like, and it's like not me, that's my like that's my buddy taking care of me,
Mm-hmm.
holding space for me.
Right. That's
That
cool.
I was like a partner, but I'm just like, I don't need this partner right now while I'm on this journey. But uh when I looked at the body in the bed, I was like, oh, there's that friend of mine. But it wasn't me, but it
Right.
was my friend.
You knew it wasn't you, that this was you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Traveling the
I did
universe.
have an affection for my body.
Well, that's good. I didn't have much of one. I was, I was like,
But I didn't ever think about it before.
yeah,
So thank you for bringing that up, because um that's an interesting thing to think about.
it is. And it makes total sense. I like that perspective better than the one when I had, would it
Totally
just look like a
valid. It's just
bag of
different.
bones.
Yeah,
Hmm.
because you're totally not your body.
You're
And
not.
you don't, you know,
We're not. Yeah. But when you look at it as a friend, I like that. And I do. I really do. And in that way, I see it differently for sure than I did before that. But I'm
yeah,
not, yeah, and I'm not going to say I'm not attached to it, because I am in that way where I need it to, move through this realm as easily as possible. But when you realize that this is just a friend, a vehicle, then
yeah,
I think it makes things a lot easier.
yeah. That, yeah, it wasn't me. It was definitely not me.
Right.
So that definitely was the same as what you had experienced. And I also had this other uh a dark experience of being out of my body. I don't know if you have you had any dark experiences?
Well, I guess it depends on what you mean by dark. But go ahead, share yours.
Um, I felt like there was a being that was malevolent, that was I was out of my body, and there was a malevolent being trying to get into my body.
Oh, no, I haven't
And
anything like that.
then my astral body like did all this great taekwondo or karate or whatever, and fought off the dark energy, and like, get away from my body. I'm still sitting over here, not in my body, and I have no plan to get back in right now, but you're not getting in.
Hmm.
And it was like I had it was it was like I knew that it had this intention to go through this blemish that I had on my back, and it was trying to go through this one little flaw that I had, which was a blemish, and it was trying to get in through the blemish. And I was like, nope,
Interesting.
I'm defending my body. And then when I came back and I was awake and I was reviewing that memory of that experience, I was like, man, I'm impressed with myself.
Right. Right. Yeah. I've always learned that in my travels that anytime we come across something that's scary or dark or anything like that, that and I'm not negating your experience at all, that these experiences are meant for us to, like you just did, to walk through the fear and to face it and do what
Get
you
something
did.
out of it.
Do what you did.
Get the
Right?
value from it. Yeah.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
perspective that
Whatever
I,
it takes to walk through that and be in that place of no fear.
yeah, I had a lot more, so many more experiences. That was just one that came to my mind as I was
Oh, okay.
sitting here, and I did not include that one in the book. So, but I included a bunch of more. Some, I went to various levels of heaven and hell, and I don't call it hell, I call it heaven level 2. But that was very educational, uh, in terms of transformational for who I am in the physical.
Mhm.
That gave me the best information on how to deal with being physical. So that was very useful experience.
Yes.
But I like to help, really guide people to reading it in the book, because the book takes you carefully through it and doesn't just throw you in the deep end. And it is definitely something you need to acclimatize to be able to process all the information that comes through in that experience,
Okay.
because it can be shocking to get too much information too fast.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that disclaimer, I guess you could call it. Yeah.
And also because so many people already have so many rules about um what it is, what the structure of the afterlife is.
Right.
And it's, it's okay, it doesn't necessarily contradict anybody's experience. Everybody has their experience, everybody's experience is valid. And I agree with what you're saying, is everything that happens is you. Everything everywhere is you, because there is this one soul that we are all.
Mhm.
And so even like past lives is still you. it's 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 paradox.
It is a
But
paradox. Yeah.
I I try to think of it as experience on the continuum, awareness of self on the continuum. And we have all of the continuum to enjoy experience from.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And always remembered, I've been taught to remember. I think we're just remembering things. I know people say this is a school for learning, but I think it's recalling, remembering what we knew at our highest level. Uh, and so we're relearning, I guess, that I lost that thought.
Sorry, my energy
No,
got really scattered too.
yeah, something happened. Yeah, I lost it. That's okay. You were talking about, the continuum on, see if it comes back around, of our experiences that we're here to experience, or in the physical realms, whichever realm that is, to experience. That's the joy of it, for one thing.
I think that's the novelty of being physical. We are adding to, through our experiences, we are potentially adding novelty to the consciousness of the divine.
Nice.
We may or may not be, but we have the potential to be.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's kind of how the interplay between divine will and fate is our own free will, and fate is a like feedback loop of consciousness, and we have the potential to drive it, but often we are just riding it.
Good point. Good point. I love that. And what my higher self, my guides have helped me remember is to write your own freaking book. Quit letting life write it for you. You're here to write your own book. We are here to write our own book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you use your potential, or step into your potential, by taking the driver's seat. And
right.
Often it's so much easier to take the ride, and sometimes you need to take a ride and not just be the driver.
Always be in
But
control. Yeah.
yeah, it's yeah, it is, that is your free will, but it isn't easy to use your free will. That's the challenge, is to find your will and then use it within yourself, because we all have free will, but we don't all use free will.
Yeah. Good point. For lots of reasons, right? Ancestry, programming, circumstances in life, victimhood, feeling like a victim, lots of things,
That's a
lots of
very good
reasons.
reason.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah, it's I could talk to you for forever. But we are about out of time, or the time that I set for our talk today. Is there anything else you wanted to share? Any more words of wisdom?
Just a reminder that you are loved. That's what people forget sometimes, that they're all busy working on loving other people, but each one of us is precious and deserving of all that divine love.
Yeah, beautiful, perfect. And so I do want, hold up your book, Mary. You have it next to you. I wish I had yours next to me and I could hold it up. And it is called Loved, a Transcendent Journey. I can't wait to
Yep.
get it.
And this cloud is I took the picture of this cloud. It's a real heart-shaped cloud.
Wow. Yeah.
It's just there, and I'm like, oh, that's a cool cloud. I love looking at the clouds. Keep you
Nice.
looking up.
Keep looking up, definitely. And so we'll have to chat again. Are you up for coming on my channel again?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I know we have a lot more to talk about.
Well, I would love to hear how you think of it after you read my book. Take your time though.
I will. I mean, I'll read it. Yeah. And it
No, I
sounds like
know
I'll
you
get
got
through it pretty quickly.
you're gonna, well, you read it really quick. It might even only take 2 hours, but then you want to read it again very slowly, so
Okay.
that you can really process that
Process it. Yeah,
and take your journey.
sure. You hear that, everyone? Yeah. And people can find you how? I will have it in the details, but if you could let us know here too.
MaryDeioma.com or Mary Deioma on Facebook. And I do have a Facebook page for my book, Love the Transcendent Journey, and our website for my book, Love the Transcendent Journey.
And you said you have videos. Where can people find those?
YouTube, Mary Deioma YouTube.
Okay.
And I have my channels and the other channels on the channels list, channels tab and YouTube. So everything's there.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing a part of your journey with
Thank
us,
you,
with me.
Sharon, for having me here. I feel so honored that you're open and you're like-minded, and also your mission to get this information out for everybody.
Oh,
It's such a
yeah.
good thing that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. I feel that too. And I appreciate your presence on the planet. Thank you so much for being here and your heart more than anything.
Hugs.
Whoo, here we go again. Okay. Thank you everyone for being here and watching this. Please subscribe, like, and comment and share with your friends and anyone you know so we can get this message out. Okay. And we'll see you again next time. Love you, everyone.